name. A beautiful smile to hide the pain. But you never know that you're my hero. You're everything I would like to be. I can fly higher than an eagle, yes I can. You are the wind beneath our wings. You might have appeared to go unnoticed. You might have appeared to go unnoticed. But I've got it all here in my home. I want you to know I know the truth. I do. It would be nothing without you. You never know that you're my hero. You're everything I wish I could be. I could fly higher than an eagle, yes I can. Because you are the wind beneath my wings. Did you ever know that you're my hero? You're everything I wish I could be. Yeah. Oh, when I could fly higher than an eagle. Yes, you can. 'Cause you are the wind beneath my wings. Oh, the wind beneath my wings. So high to touch the sky. Thank you, you were the father, you were a husband, you were the wind beneath our wings.
At this time, we're gonna have, okay, can I get the Green family to stand up, please? The whole family. We're gonna have James come up and say a few words.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for being here today to honor my father and to gather in recognition and celebration of his life and how he affected us all in our individual ways. Thank you to the Airport Police Department for putting this together today so that we could celebrate his life. I don't know what to say. Those were the last meaningful words my father actually spoke to me, as our family was coming to terms with the reality that his cancer had taken a turn for the worse that he probably wasn't going to be able to recover from. And it's also true in the sense that I don't know what to say today in a lot of ways. LaPonda and Dennis have done such a great job of already sharing with you what type of person my father was. But I think I have a unique perspective, obviously, because his family was so important to him. And I think there's a perspective that many of you may not have seen from growing up as his son and being part of his family. One of the things that stands out the most to me about all the lessons that my father taught me was how important it was to be honest and to have integrity. And above all else, if there are any problems, if there are any situations, if we were running into any issues, his advice was always to be honest. So I wasn't really surprised that he said that he doesn't know what to say, because that was the type of person that he was. He was a man of few words in a lot of ways, and I'm sure everyone here has experienced some instances with my father. If you ask him a question, he would have a very long pause and maybe stare off into the distance. You might wonder, is he even paying attention anymore? Is he staring off, thinking about fishing or going on vacation somewhere else? You wonder if 60 seconds would go by and wonder, should I walk away? Is he going to respond? So there were awkward times like that, and I would wonder what's going on in his mind during this time, because he's so lost in thought and not even sure if he's paying attention. But as I grew older, I noticed I had a lot of similarities to my father, particularly in the way we think, and a lot of it has to do with the way that he raised me. And I realized that most of the times that he was doing this, it wasn't that he wasn't paying attention, but he was so careful and thoughtful about what he wanted to say that he took the time to think very deeply about how to best approach someone or how to respond to someone's questions. And that's something that I know affected everyone that he spoke with and was a part of. I'm more surprised that he would actually say something like, I don't know what to say at all. At times he would seem kind of distant and distressed, and even though he loved his family and we were really happy about spending time with him, there were times where it felt like he didn't know how to express himself, and he never really expressed his true feelings. Some weekends were spent on our boat happily fishing or working and tinkering away on fixes and next improvement to the boat. But other times my dad would spend hours sitting alone, staring off in the distance, and it was hard. I felt bad, and I wanted to understand what he was going through and help support him. And my mom and my family did such a great job of always being there for him and being together as a family. He was always really stoic and supportive. He almost never really expressed his true feelings, except in crude jokes or making fun of people, and like LaPonda said, backing them up afterwards. But I can't even recall a time where my father cried. I'm sure that he did, but he would always stay strong and stoic for us and for the family. And even though he was as stoic as he was, and it was difficult for him to express his feelings, the times where he was excited, those times that he was happy, he showed joy and excitement, made those all the more meaningful. And the look and love and pride in his eyes was something that really left an impression on me, and I'm sure left an impression on anyone that saw that with him. But like LaPonda said, my name was that he was really a really bright, incredibly intelligent person. I always knew my father had a troubled childhood to some degrees, and there's a lot of stories that I'm sure my mom and family can tell about that. But it actually wasn't until recently, when I was talking with my mom, that I realized, or I was reminded that in his childhood, he dropped out of school in around middle school years, and he missed 5 years or so of education. And despite that, when it was time for him to get back on track, and he decided he wanted to get his high school graduation, he went to Kirk Cherry High School in Torrance, and he actually passed the examinations and got back up to speed, having missed 5 years of school, no problem. And my mom told me about how even in those years when he wasn't in school, he was still studying, he was still learning. He had natural curiosity. He was reading books like Tolstoy's War and Peace. And that's something that really left an impression on me, and something that was really obvious if you spent any time with my father. You could see how special he was and how thoughtful he was. And sometimes I wonder how things might have been different for him if he would have a little bit of a different upbringing or had more support growing up. But at the same time, I'm very grateful for the fact that he was able to spend the time that he did with the Airport Police Department and with our family. And I'm very happy with how things have turned out, obviously. And I think that even though he didn't have the opportunities for himself to maybe go after the true dreams and spirit that he had inside himself, he knew that his true focus was on his family. And he did everything that he could to make sure that the opportunities that he may have missed growing up would be provided to his children going forward and the rest of his family. And that's something that he held true to himself throughout his life and beyond. That same intellectual curiosity was something that he definitely fostered in his children, Katie and I. Years before Google and the internet were as popular as they were today, my father was like a walking encyclopedia in a lot of ways, which made it difficult, especially when you go to ask him a question and he'd stare off into the distance for 60 seconds and wonder if you'd ever get a response. So really glad Google turned up, but I was grateful to have a little bit better technology these days. And you got the sense that there was no problem that he couldn't solve. And if you thought he couldn't, then good luck, because he was very stubborn about pretty much everything and would spend an inordinate amount of time to do so just to prove you wrong if he had something he disagreed with you on. He was quite a handyman, unlike anyone I've ever met. Definitely a result of his curiosity and passion for boating and tinkering and technology, as Dennis could definitely allude to. And that's something that he definitely passed on to Katie and I, and kind of fostered our own natural curiosities and intelligence moving forward. And part of what he did to support this was, all throughout our childhood, he was the kind of model parent in terms of always being there when we were growing up as kids. I think one of my proudest moments, and something that was a big inspiration to me, that wasn't really obvious to me until recently, and especially seeing the pictures of our family at Blue Ribbon Day at Hickory Elementary School. You don't really have a context for who you are and who your parents are in relation to everyone else until you have a moment like that, where we're celebrating the Torrance Police Department, but also just police in general. And you have a whole assembly there of 500, 600 kids sitting out there. And my dad and my mom are up there talking to the crowd about what they do and how important they are to the community. And that made me feel like I was the most special kid in the world. And I never really knew what motivated me to do the things that I did until I thought about how that was an inspiration to me, because he was a model person and he was being the best person that he could be. And my parents were always so supportive. If we came home with a C or a D, it wouldn't matter. My parents would always say, just do your best. As long as you put in a good effort, that's all that really matters. But I think when I saw my father up there and I knew how important he was, I wanted to live up to the expectations that he had and the opportunities that he provided for our family, and make sure that what I thought was the ideal model parenting wouldn't go to waste. And that's something that I've carried with me throughout my life, and I'm sure Katie has as well, as we grow older and as we went through school. But more than just learning facts and our natural curiosities for school, he really taught us to take pride in what we worked on and we're passionate about, and focused on the proper process above all else. And there's this funny story of, in the first grade, I had a homework assignment, which was to go home, and we had a little journal. I think it was the first day of school. And the assignment was to make a list of all the fruits and vegetables that you could think of, and make sure that you spell them correctly and list them alphabetically. And this seems like a pretty trivial thing, but as a first grader, apparently it was a lot more difficult than I thought it was. And I remember that night, it was due the next day, I was sitting up in the living room in our house in Torrance, and my dad came over and was sitting with me, and he would never give me the answers to the question, but he would help me work through it on my own and teach me how to solve problems without giving me the answer directly. And I remember that night, I was struggling so much and so frustrated that he said, you know what, something that really helps me is if I put the problem aside and I'll come back to it tomorrow with a fresh mentality and fresh mindset. And he followed through on that, because the next morning I woke up early and sat in the living room, got my journal out, and was thinking of vegetables and fruits to write down. And here comes Dad down the stairs at 7 o'clock in the morning, sitting down right next to me and supporting me and making sure that I followed through on that. I got all the vegetables and fruits correct, so that's awesome. But beyond that, it was something that carried with me throughout my life. In middle school and high school, I would go to sleep at around 8 o'clock at night because I would be so tired and frustrated with school. And I would wake up at like 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock in the morning and do my homework assignments. And it seems kind of absurd, especially for most high school age kids that you hear about sleeping in and staying up late, watching TV, doing work. But it was something that was just driven into me by my father, and something that was really important to me to carry on even throughout my life. And that's something that, a process that I even carry with me today with the work that I do on a daily basis. He was absolutely a terrific problem solver. I think that above all else, loving his family and through his work, he just loved to help people and solve problems. And I really get the sense that he was a master strategist and master tactician in a lot of ways. And I'm sure there are a ton of stories about working at the airport police that are related to that. But just in general, there's a lot of clever things that he did. One of my favorite stories is when my parents were growing up, and they were trying to get my sister to eat fish. And my dad convinced my sister that it was chicken, because my sister would only eat chicken, nothing else. So he would open cans of tuna, fish that we caught, give it to my sister, and she would think, oh, this tastes a little weird. And he'd say, oh no, it's just chicken. And she eventually wisened up and figured it out and became a picky eater, but he did a good job of getting through that point at least. But even beyond that, even though I'm sure he was a strategist at work, it was pretty cool that he liked sharing in our passions. My sister and I, we grew up playing video games. I'm a game designer now and a producer, so it's something that's really a big passion of ours. And it's really cool that in the early 2000s, when we were growing up, my dad actually introduced us to StarCraft. And some of my fondest memories from growing up were my sister and my dad and I would play StarCraft together. And my dad would play like 1-on-2 against us. And you never think this, but you know, we're kids and we play games all the time and stuff like that, but my dad was really good at it, and for years we would never be able to beat him. And he would definitely rub it in. It was something that he made sure we knew, and that he would crush us, and we would never have any hope against him. But you know, that's something that, you know, he loved sharing our passions, but he wasn't afraid to hold back. Some of his actions that he took in our parenting seem strange, but again, as I got older, I got a lot more wisdom about what his methods might be, and it shed a lot of light on the type of parent and person he was. He had a really crazy sense of humor. He wasn't afraid to make fun of people or embarrass people, but it wasn't necessarily in a negative way. I think in a lot of ways he was trying to make sure that we had thick skin, so that as we grew older and we found adversity, that we'd always be prepared in some way. And he took it to some extremes sometimes. I remember at times we would go to just a supermarket on a Saturday morning, and my dad and I would be walking down the freezer aisle, and it would just be us. And all of a sudden, he would just, out of nowhere, stand there and say, "Jimmy Green just farted in the aisle."